Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Fly Culture podcast. I don't know if you're like me. I'm going fishing. This podcast is being recorded on October the 12th. I'm going fishing with a good friend tomorrow, and I've been sorting out all my kit to put in the car because it usually lives in the back of it during regular season. But I've been sorting out my fly boxes. And I don't know if I'm weird or strange or anything, but one of my favourite pastimes is sorting out my fly boxes. I just love doing it. And I fished with a friend not so long ago who keeps his fly boxes immaculate. I sort of open mine up and everything sort of falls out and I have to pick everything back up again. But that's part of it. And I suppose that's part of the ritual ahead of going on a fishing trip. You know, the weather's been a bit hit and miss here. And, you know, I've been okay with not fishing, but really, really looking forward to this trip. So I think that's going to be great fun. Thanks for all the very kind comments about the latest issue of the magazine. I really do appreciate them, and thank you for sharing and telling people about it. As you know, we don't ask anyone to do that. It's just so nice to see people are enjoying it, and along with the podcast as well. So thank you. It really means a lot to us. So thank you very much indeed for that. I'm really, really pleased to be joined by someone who has won casting competitions, distance and accuracy, held a world record for casting 66 rods at once, represented his country at fly fishing on a number of occasions, consults on tackle production, has appeared on TV, made multiple DVDs, is a regular at fishing shows, and somehow manages to pack in the time to be a guide and instructor too. So I'm really, really pleased to be joined today by Hywel Morgan. Hywel, how's it going?
It's all right. What an introduction. Hope I live up to it.
That's a pretty impressive CV, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm just a fisherman, to be honest with you, who happened to fall into casting by accident. Totally by accident. I mean, I was born and bred on the River Tybee back in Mid Wales, where I've come back to live now. My teacher was the River Tybee. She was a tough taskmaster. Even before the age of actually going to school at 3, I was allowed to go down the river and fish on my own. But my mum used to run a local post office and shop, general store. So all the old people going to the shop would actually peer over the bridge, have a look, and I was allowed, there was a 30-yard stretch that I was allowed from the bridge to where this stream came in, and that's where I used to spend all my days. My little wicker basket, flask of tea, sandwiches, and I'd be down there every day. Unfortunately, then I had to go to school at the age of 4. But, you know, after school, summer holidays, it was always down the river. But then casting, wasn't interested in it. It was a means to get in the fly to where the fish was. And at the age of 11 or 12, I think, I was at a country fair. No, actually, it was at the CLA game fair. And a couple of my friends were quite big into the casting, Steve Wood and Pete Kelly. And they said, come on, have a go. And I was, why the hell do I want put a piece of wool in a ring, in a hoop? What's the point? Come on. I went, no, I'm not doing it. And they paid. They paid 50p for me to enter, and then I actually won. And I won a £12.50 tackle voucher. Now, to a Welshman, right? You know, we are renowned for being careful with money. Yeah, tight. Most people call us, I know. That made a lot of financial sense. I thought, right, okay. And that winter, I took it a bit more serious. I put some hoops in the back garden. Did the distance up on the little village green. And I've heard all the comments, you know, the cars going by shouting and all that. So anybody that goes out to parks, don't worry, you're going to be called every name under the sun. But, you know, if you want to practice your casting, that's the best place to do it. And I just went on from there. And the following year, went back to the game fair. Won all 6 events. That's salmon distance, trout distance, dry fly accuracy, wet fly accuracy, obstacle, and then spinning accuracy. And actually the prize money had gone up. It went to £15 per event, which was even more financial sense. And then the following day, did the same thing, but I wasn't allowed to enter because if you win the first day, you can't win the second day. So at the age of 13, I was entering against the adults and the open professional section, won all that. That went on for 3 years. And then the CLA kindly asked me not to enter anymore. And my mum was quite put out. She said, well, why? He's only 15. Why is he not allowed to enter? And he said, well, we've got to give other people a chance to win. And, you know, it just stemmed from there. And then I went to the British Casting Association. Wow, that was a steep learning curve. You're talking from driving an ordinary car to driving Formula Ones. You know, to put it into context, people don't understand tournament gear. On the AFTM scale, you're looking at sort of 16, 17 weights for distance, and your accuracy, you're actually using a 10 weight. You know, for which it makes no sense whatsoever to an angler. But that's what you're using. So yeah, that was a major learning curve. And I actually took out. I was going through my O levels. Did a couple of resets, and then in November I left school, and in the village where I live, we've got a big Eisteddfod hall, massive hall, and I went in there in November, and I practiced 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, from 9 o'clock till 3:30, 4 o'clock, all depending on light, and then. That was November, December, January, February, March. And then in April, a local farmer gave me a field. I came outside, all the targets, all the distance stuff, and I practiced 6 to 8 hours a day, every day. And that took me from British standard to world standard. And then, you know, that's all you have to do then when you go to world championships is harness the nerves for accuracy and distance. It's all down to, if you're lucky on the day, you know, the standard at world and European, it's so close that the person who gets the favourable breeze is probably going to be the winner on that day. I think the best one I can remember was the European Championships, which we did in the Olympic Stadium in Berlin. And for some reason, they cooked the books, right? They did cook the books. Last caster up on each platform, I would say, if I'd have picked the best 6 in the world champions, in the European Championships, that was the top 6 that were on last. So I thought, oh, this is unusual. And when you've got 6 courts going, you know, even though everybody has 5 minutes to cast, you have a minute preparation time. Well, courts run faster than the others. Some people finish quicker. They take less time to set up. So courts will run ahead of each other, but on this occasion they stopped everybody and they put all 6 of us up at the same time, started the clock at the same time, so it was like a shootout, and I was lucky enough to win that on the very, very last cast. I had 15 seconds left, and I had when you're doing a tournament cast, I was the British team. There was nobody else from the UK. And so you have a gillie, and mine was Felix Laschnid from Germany, who was about 6'7" tall and about 6 foot wide. He was a huge bloke. And the German controller said, right, Hywel, and I don't understand German. And I screamed at Felix, what did he say? What did he say? And he said, Hywel, you have 15 seconds. And that's all he shouted was, hit it! And I did. The cast before, I knew I had about a minute left, and I cut it. Stupid, over enthusiasm, tried to put too much, and I cut my shoulder into it, and I pulled the cast sideways, so I ripped that back. And then that last 15 seconds, everything was perfect. And that's all I had in my mind was keep it straight. Keep it straight. Just hit it. And it was unbelievable. Ola Spang, my best friend in casting from Sweden, he was up at the same time. Karl Sversky from Czech Republic, he was up as well, and we all gathered at the end. And I heard 59 meters from one, 59 from another, and we thought, oh God, what? You know, we're down to centimeters now. And Felix just ran up and gave me the biggest bear hug. I don't think I could breathe. The guy was so strong. And he said, "You've done it." And it was actually 19 centimeters that separated first, second, and third.
Wow.
That's how close it was. It was unbelievable. Problem was, it was in the Olympic Stadium, so the wind aspect. That's why the distances were down. But yeah, that was the really memorable event. So that's how it all started, from sort of a 50p that a friend of mine put down, and I won £12.50, all the way up to World Championships.
That's a pretty consistent curve, though, isn't it? And pretty impressive. It's really interesting listening those distances. I assume they were with the heavier rods, because it's fascinating, isn't it? When people say I've cast the full fly line, they always assume that's 90 feet plus 10 feet of leader, which in real world it's usually around 70 something feet, isn't it? And they're huge. 50 odd meters is a huge distance.
It's I mean, the most I've done is 80 meters single-handed, and that was recorded. That's the furthest. I think it still is. It was done in Alnwick, but it was one of those perfect casts, and it was actually with a T38, and it was not just distance, because you do accuracy and distance. The event has gone from the Casting Federation now, but what you had 3 targets, and you did 9 casts. You had 10 minutes, and then you go for the first, the second, and third target. You reel in, you go second, third, first, reel in, third, first, second, and then whatever time you've got left, you do the distance. And it was done in Alnwick. It was the last tournament of the year for the British Casting Association, and I thought, yeah, these are good distances. These are good distances, and then I just hit one that was just, everything was right. The backcast just lay down, opened out so right. I hit it so right. I actually thought, oh my God, I haven't got enough running line. So I was stripping nylon off the reel, and the reel, you remember it was the old Speedex 1.5, because obviously in the accuracy you wanted to reel up quickly so you don't waste time, and I was ripping that off, and I could hear the drag going. I'm going, oh God, have I got enough? I've got enough. Have I got enough? And the whole thing went, and there was 2 clicks on the reel. That was it. So I just stripped enough off. Tournament lines never open out properly. They just land. And this just clicked twice. Everything just turned over. And I'm walking down. My mum was there. Andrew Gooding was there. I think, was Simon Gosworth there or not? Yes, I was there, I think. And I can't remember who it was. Oh, Ron Blackburn. He was the judge, and he went, I said, oh, this is all right. Yeah, it's not bad. He said, yeah, how that's 72 meters. I went, yeah, that's okay. He said, yeah, but what about that one behind? I went, what? I said, that's the court marker. He said, no, that's your best cast.
Wow.
And that was 8 meters further, 80 meters, 49 centimeters. I mean, I was just blown away by it. It was the perfect cast, probably my most perfect cast of my life. Everything was just right. I pulled enough line off the reel. It clicked, it straightened out. The wind was in the right place. So yeah. So yeah, when people say, "Oh, I cast 50 yards," you think, "Yeah, okay, mate. Yeah, all right." They do cast it on water. Then you get them on grass, and you put a tape measure next to it, and distances are not quite exactly what you think they are.
Yeah, I've sort of played around a little with 5-weight distance, and just to make me feel really bad now, what were you throwing 5-weight distance?
See, we never did that.
Oh, right.
I mean, the only time you'd use 6s and 7s, and no 5 weights was at the game fair, because ICF, it was all, you used your own equipment, and there was no, I mean, yes, with regards to lines, the weight of the lines and everything. So it was a T42 or a T38, and that was it. So the 5 weights and 7 weights, weren't around then. And to be honest with you, the guys that are using now 5 weights, yeah, but they're not proper 5 weights. I mean, come on. What they're using now, they're saying it's it's a 5-weight line, but they're using 7 and 8 weight rods to handle, because of the amount of line they're handling out a holding in the air. Do you know, they should actually just use the same rods, not individual rods. And I mean, that was what was brilliant about the game.
Yeah.
That was that one rod, one line, and everybody had to use it. I remember one year, it was actually in trout distance. I can't remember what year it was, but they hadn't put enough backing on the reel, and everybody was casting 31 yards. That was it, right? And I just turned around to the controller. I said, "Listen, do I have to have the rod in my hand when I finish the cast?" He went, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, do I have to hold it?" "No, why?" I said, "Well, there's no more backing." So what I did, I launched the cast, and as it was coming to the backing, I chucked the rod 6 yards up the bank. So my cast went, everybody's going 31, 30, 31, 36. How the hell has he done that? And the rod was 5-6 yards up the bank. I said, "Told you, I haven't got enough backing." And nobody found out about it until after the event. And they went, "Well, how did you get so far?" I went, "See, you've got to know these tricks."
Yeah. They're great things, and I remember watching those things at the CLA, and actually my only claim to fame in distance casting is measuring Scott Mackenzie's one at, I think it was Beaver Castle or something, I can't remember, and I happened to be in the boat, and they said, "Go out there, Pete, and go and measure some stuff with somebody in the boat," and this thing just went flying over the top of us. The line went flying over the
Yeah.
top, and we knew it was a...
I'm not sure if I think I was commentating on that one or one of them. Yeah. I mean, it was brilliant. And the thing is, it's so impressive to watch it. I mean, okay, is it relevant for fishing? Probably not. It's the same as tournament casting, but it helps the ordinary angler. But seeing them, it's impressive watching the distance cast, but actually their line management, of actually putting that line in the anchor point in the first place. Most ordinary anglers wouldn't even be able to lift that amount of line off the water. And to see them, and even once they've launched it out, relocating it back to the start point, and then, I mean, it's so impressive, and it's beautiful to see. They're just artists with a rod, and those loops when they get it right is just brilliant.
Yeah. It's really interesting, though. Did you notice, having done those aspects of it, that your casting and your fishing as a result of that improved, especially with the accuracy?
Yes. The thing is, when I was right into it and practicing a lot, I went from hula hoops to saucers, basically, and tops of jam jars. Rather than having a massive hoop, you've just got a lip. So, going down the river now, or after then, and seeing a fish rise behind a tree or behind a branch, and that, no problem. You didn't, I didn't even have to think about it. It was second nature. And even to this day, having done all those hours and hours and hours and hours of practice, it only takes a little bit of practice to get my eye in now, because yes, my accuracy is nowhere near what it used to be, but give me 10 minutes and it's back up to a respectable, let's put it there, and yeah, I can put the fly where I want it. And with regards to distance and that, every distance to me isn't really important in fishing. Okay, yes, when you're in certain situations, when the fish are out and you can get your fly there, then brilliant. If you can get it further than anybody else, you've got a better chance. But it's not the be all and end all. And having done that, yeah, I know how to get the best of whatever equipment I'm using. So if I am fishing dry fly with a 5-weight, yes, I know I can get it 30 yards if I need to. Would I want to? Not really, because it's not designed to do that. But I can do it if I need to, in that situation.
Yeah, I remember when I first started working for Nick, and he said to me, a decent fly caster can pick up any rod and cast it pretty much straight up. And I think even with the distance thing, it kind of helps you understand if something is going wrong in the cast, or if something isn't, if it's tracking or whatever, you can pick up on it pretty quick, I guess.
I think that's the great thing about when you take things to extreme. When it can be especially using T42s, which are really, really powerful rods. Everything's got to be right to get the best out of that equipment. I mean, give you a very, very simple explanation. Obviously with the T42, you're using a massive open stance. And I remember years ago, I was working down in Bristol in a leisure centre, and Steve Backley, the javelin thrower, they'd come down to the athletics track. They're doing a coaching session there was a couple of young guns who were really good at javelin, and they'd come down, and I was actually practicing distance not far from the track, and I just having a chat with them. And it's very, very similar, the action of casting a T42 to throwing a javelin. A couple of differences, obviously. They let go of the javelin, we don't let go of the rod. But it was actually alignment of my left foot. Now, if I put my left foot pointing straight down the court, I'm not going to cast as far as if I actually move my left foot 1.5 inches to the left. Because having it straight down the court means I've blocked my hips off. Having open to the court, I can actually use my hip, a little bit of hip rotation, then shoulder rotation, and then bring my arms into it. Now, when you've taken it to that extreme and you're analysing every little bit, when it comes back to ordinary anglers, it's so easy. And that's the brilliant part about teaching casting and with guys out on the water, is that everyone's different, and there's different nuances and things you can change, and then seeing them improve or get a bit more distance. It's sometimes it's really challenging, but that's what I like. Unfortunately, in the UK, it's not like, I think, the States. I remember being out there 97 with Jackson Hole for the World Fly Fishing Championships. And I remember we were going out down the Snake with guides, and I was just talking to a couple of the guys, and there was a girl taking a casting course. And I said, "Oh, how long they've been with you?" "Oh, they've been 4 mornings now." I said, "All right." I said, "Well, when are they going on the water?" And she said, "They go on the water when I tell them they go on the water." And I went, "Wow." She said, "Yeah, that's it. They learn correctly." In the UK, we haven't had that history. When I started, I became self-employed 20 plus years ago. And I remember it was after I won the World Casting Championships. I was actually working for local authorities in leisure centres, and I was a manager of a leisure centre, and I won the World Casting Championships. And I phoned Simon up, Simon Gorsworth, and Gorsey went, "I was expecting this call." He said, as soon as I heard, he said, "Well done on winning it." He said, "I was expecting this call." And I said, "Yeah, what do you think?" And so I said, "Well, listen, it's a great life." He said, "You're never not going to make a lot of money." He said, "But it's a great life. But don't be scared to stack shelves in Tesco in the winter." And I went, "Well, sorry, mate, I can't do that." He said, "Well, if you're too proud to do that, you're not going to survive." I said, "No, it's not that I'm too proud." I said, "We haven't got a Tesco." I said, "We haven't got a supermarket." So, for the first, I think it was 5-6 years, every winter I'd be harvesting Christmas trees. And then in the spring, I'd be planting Christmas trees. And then when the season started, off I went, guiding, teaching, and all that. And, in those days, grayling, what were they? They're vermin that people don't fish for. Thankfully, it's totally changed now. But nobody fished for them, so the rivers shut down in October. Small still waters wasn't really that popular, so your work did dry up in the winter. So yeah, it was challenging times, those were, but it's just nice that every different person you teach is a different challenge, and hopefully they improve their technique and catch a few more fish.
That's a really interesting point you make about people being different and having to tailor the day or the session or whatever it is to them, because it could be easy, and I have seen examples of it, where people have a certain script that they go through, but everyone's different, aren't they, in the way that they take on the information? And the other word you used was nuances. And there are subtle ones that you have to detect to make sure they click with the person, to make that an enjoyable and
It,
rewarding experience.
I mean, there are 10 different plus ways of describing each thing that you do. And people take it in different ways. I mean, I'll give you an example. St. Fagans, which is the Welsh Heritage Museum down in Cardiff. We used to go down every year, and honestly, it was conveyor belt tuition for kids. Just fun on the ponds they have there. And you'd have 5 minutes per child, right? So, and we had them from 2 years of age up to 80. Yeah, right. So the children free tuition. Yeah, okay. So there are no kids around. The adults have a go as well. But and I remember it was my youngest daughter, and there was the worst thing with children. One of the ones is they're too much of a hurry, and they try and rip the line off the water. And Tanya went, "Look for the selector's hat," and I went, "Okay, did I hear that right?" And this girl absolutely peeled the line off the water perfectly. Accelerated port, and I went, all right, okay, what's that all about? And she said, don't forget selector's hat. And I'm going like, right, shut up, right? So we stopped for lunch. I said, Tam, what do you mean selector's hat? She said, Dad, come on, Harry Potter. I went, what are you going on about? She said, Dad, remember in Harry Potter when they select which house they go into, they put that witch's hat on their head. Right, I'm still not with you. See, Dad, when you pull the line off the water, it makes a V, which is a point like a witch's hat. And I was telling her, as soon as you see the witch's hat, kick it back. And I went, oh my God. And it clicked with that little young girl so quickly after that. And I thought, right, okay, keep that in the back of your head because you're teaching kids. Try that. And there's so many different ways, and people take information on in different ways. I mean, post-COVID has been a little bit challenging, to be honest with you, teaching. I've been out quite a few times, and when you're teaching casting, I mean, everybody wants to learn the double haul, and if your technique is good enough, you should be able to pick up the double haul quite quickly. 15, 20 minutes. You should get the rudimentaries of a double haul. And I tell you what, since lockdown restrictions were lifted and I was teaching, it has been a challenge to teach a double haul because you can't get hold of them anymore.
Yes, cool.
You can't physically, and if you physically can get hold of someone's hauling hand, you can get them double hauling so quick, right? You can get them doing it. And boy, the first time I went out and I'm going, I can't get hold of you. I can't get hold of your left hand. And I'm going, right, shall I use surgical gloves? And I think, no, you've got to do it at distance tuition. And that has been quite challenging, to be honest with you. Managed it, but it took me over an hour to actually, and we had to break it down really simple and really get in the arm actions. And I thought, wow, this is a totally different way of teaching now. And please, let's get back to the old way of teaching because it was so much easier.
So what did you have to do? Did you have to have a separate rod, or did you?
Yeah. Total separate rods. The one I was teaching double haul, he had his own equipment. If I'm taking beginners out, I've got their own equipment, my equipment, which is sterilized the night before. They pick it up. They use that rod, all the thing. Where normally I'd take the rod off them if I wanted to show them something, I could just use their rod. And if I'm talking about a particular retrieve or that, I'd just pick the rod up and say, look, no, you can't do that anymore. You've got your demo rod next to you. Show them with your rod, so you're not cross-contaminating and all this. So yeah, you've got to be very careful. Different way. Buffs, we all wear buffs anyway. and I've been wearing buffs for years. It's just a difference now. You look like a gangster when you're teaching, as opposed to. I mean, I had to go in the bank yesterday, the day before. I was looking as if I was going to rob it. I just couldn't stop laughing. It's like, I mean, yeah, it was sunny as well, so I had glasses on. I'm thinking, 6-8 months ago, they'd be calling
You'd
the
have been
police
wrestled
if you
to the
walked in.
ground and thrown. Tell me something. Do you prefer teaching, casting, or guiding? What is your favourite?
Oh, that's a hard one. I love the casting because it takes me back to my competition days. And yeah, casting is if it's total beginners, it's an easy thing. The ones that I really like are the ones that I've fished for years, and they maybe have got ingrained faults, and we've got to iron them out, and you've got to make a decision as well. Well, is it really worth taking them all the way back to basics and rebuild again, or is what they've got, the principles they've got and the technique they've got, we just add to? So that, but actually probably have to edge on guiding, because seeing them catch maybe their first fish, or learning a technique and catching on that technique. I remember one, as guides, as fishermen and all that, we do take a lot of fish for granted. Oh, it's a fish, and brought it home to me. Well, I mean, I'm going back probably 10 years on the River Dee up in North Wales, and it was at the time the English had their national on the Dee, and they were about 4 or 5 weeks after this, but I'd had a couple of the guys, the English boys, up phoning me up saying, "Hywel, it's fishing really bad," and I went, "Yeah, I know. We need a flush. We just need something to flush it through." It was that time of year where it'd been really, really hot, and when you're walking through and the algae was coming up, and it was just horrible. And fish just don't want to feed in that kind of atmosphere. So it was, and I had 3 gentlemen. The guy had come up, never caught a grayling in his life before, and it was his birthday present from his wife. They'd come up to Llangollen, they'd stayed in the Hand Hotel. I think they'd had a good night the night before. So took them down the river, and we were struggling, really struggling. I mean, international anglers were coming off blank and during practice, and I'm thinking, So I'd taken them down to one stretch. We'd fished all morning. We'd had a couple of salmon par, and no grayling. Nothing was rising. Nothing was happening. And then I went down to one place, and he hooked a fish, and it was a nice grayling. It was £1.75, maybe touching 2. It was close, and he was excited. I was excited, and I chased it. I got it in the net. Came back, and he picked the grayling up, and I took a picture of him, and I went, "Are you okay?" And he was in a daze. He was honestly in a daze, and I'm thinking, "Are you okay?" Yeah, fine. And he just sat down on the bar. I said, take a breather. I said, it's not as if you're missing out on any fish. We've been lucky to catch that. We went down to see his friends, and I said, "You all right?" "Oh, yeah. I said, "Well, what?" He said, "Well, that was the one thing that he really, really wanted to do was," and he was just so much in awe of that fish. And he didn't fish for the rest of the day. He just sat on the bank, and I kept going back, "Are you all right?" And he went, yeah, that fish, that fish. And I thought, yeah, they are really special. And we do catch fish, we'll put it back, and then you see other people that have never caught a grayling, and they really, really appreciate it, and it brings it home to you as well, and I just love that reaction of seeing people, whether it's learning a new technique or catching on it, and seeing I get appreciation and enjoyment out of them enjoying their day.
Yeah, and as a guide, you know what it's like when it's tough and they get a fish and it's a good one. And the advice I always gave people who were working with us is back yourself. You'll do it. You've got to, haven't you?
Yeah,
And just keep the faith and not panic, because it's really easy to start panicking and making changes you wouldn't normally make, I guess, as well.
Yes, you stick to your guns. You know, it's work. You know what you're doing. You know where the fish are, but you know, and that fish actually, that particular fish saved me one more time as well, because I mean that the river was for about 3 weeks was dead, was off. There was no insects coming off. Fish weren't feeding, and that fish, I took another client back to the same place and we caught that fish again. I nearly actually thought, right, shall I take a pint of maggots back and just give it to the fish for free, just to say thank you for saving a blank? Honestly. And then, you know, the English national was coming up, and they got a flush through, and the river was back to pristine and flies coming off, fish rising. And the English boy, oh, this is brilliant. I said, I told you, boys, don't panic, you know. And this is one of those things. Sometimes, you know, you can't catch every time, and it, you know, it's not all about catching. Sometimes it's about taking people out to somewhere they haven't been or wouldn't experience, learning techniques, obviously. But it's, I mean, don't get me wrong, I want to catch every time, but you don't, you know, and that's what makes the days that you do catch that little bit more special.
Here, 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 here. Um, I wanted to talk to you as well. We talked at the beginning, or you mentioned fishing shows and stuff like that, and I think we've got, just because we had Toby's one, which I think had great potential, and I know you work around these, and we're working on those, and CLA, and we've got BFFI. Do you think there's room? And there was obviously the London one as well. Do you think we need some more fishing shows with this? If these numbers of people entering angling continue, that there's room
I
for more?
I think there is now. You know, the numbers are being quoted: 294% increase in rod license sales. Well, one thing I hope that more from those rod license sales. Let's hope there's more money invested in angling to start with. You know, we keep hearing the horror stories about what's happening with the chalk streams. You know, the devastation we are having on a regular basis in Wales. I'm sorry, but natural resources Wales, we've said it, and many of anglers said it, are not fit for purpose at the moment. You know, it's reactive. It's not proactive. It's, oh, you know, and they're not reacting. I know from a very reliable source that one polluter on the River Towie, you know, he says, I'll pay the fine, you know, and that's it. He doesn't care. And I'm sorry, anglers and angling clubs in Wales have got on fantastically well with farmers for years and years and years. We've got riparian owners. You know, farmers have been brilliant for clubs. I mean, just talking to you about Llangollen, you know, I know of a load of farmers that have given part, you know, little corner of the field so anglers can park off the road. You know, and angling clubs and farmers have always worked together and worked brilliantly. Unfortunately, now we have got probably 5% of farmers that don't care about waterways, you know. And the Towie is a great example, because you know that was the premier sea trout river in the whole of Europe, you know. And I knew of so many people, you know, anglers that lived in London, that as soon as the first sea trout was reported, they'd be down for 3-4 nights, because they knew there was a big chance of double figure sea trout on that first run. Nowadays, you don't get anglers on the river. It's that bad. So I hope with the increase, there'll be more money to look after our waterways for our future generations. That's one priority that's got to, because it's all right, well and good, so many more anglers coming in. It means that if we don't look after the natural resources we already have, there won't be anywhere for them to fish, and we've really got to actually lobby for that. Yes, I think, you know, it was only on Friday I got an email saying that the game fair is going ahead in July. Bigger and better, more investment in the angling, and I think it's going to be a bumper year. Really, really so. It's a great pity that we've lost the London Fly Fair, because that was such a showcase. I don't think I've ever demonstrated in such a brilliant place. That top of the hall. What John and Fergal did was they put on a fantastic show. I mean, that's what they do. Is they are professional show people, and they put a great shop window. Unfortunately, I don't think it was supported enough by the trade. It also clashed with a big carp show, so dates, unfortunately, there are shows every weekend, and we've lost we've lost Chatsworth, which was a great angling event. And I think Toby was ahead of his time, and I think now, a couple of years' time, lure fishing is becoming so much more popular, and I think there's a great crossover between fly and lure, and we can learn from each other. I mean, I have been doing a lot of soft lure fishing this summer, and it's great, and a lot of my fly techniques are transferring it into the way I retrieve lures for bass, and it's been working really well. Yeah, so I reckon there is room in the calendar. BFFI hopefully will go ahead. Just don't know. We lost the Irish Fly Fair, which was due next month. I think Steve he's going to do a virtual one. Hope that goes well for him. But yes, definitely. If there's that much percentage in Rod's license increase, then I think we could put a lot more bums on seats in shows.
Yeah, it would be great to have some more, and they're really enjoyable. They're a great means of catching up with people, seeing stuff, seeing people like yourself casting, and learning stuff. And yeah, it would be really really cool if those were to pick up in some way. And I guess if that curve that we talk about with greater numbers of people, there's going to be a chance that somebody will be looking at that. I agree with what you said about Toby's show as well, which was down in Bristol,
Yeah,
and he was very quick. I spoke to him, funnily enough, the other day, and he was very, very quick to spot that there was crossovers
yeah.
in soft lures, in everything else, and certainly this summer as well. And having been around the fishing for a long time, that it's kind of interesting to see that what we call the outside sort of stuff, the mullet, the carp, of course, along with pike and everything else, that's having another rise in popularity, isn't it? And so that lends itself kind of well to those things, doesn't it?
It is. I've done a lot this year of rock hopping and walking the coast and that with lure rods, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And a friend I've been out on his boat a couple of times, and I said, well, why don't you fly fish for them? He said, I fly fish for trout. He said, I spin for bass. And yeah, I have a couple of times taken a fly rod in the back of the waistcoat, but to be honest with you, I haven't pulled it out because I have loved my lure fishing, and it's different, but it actually takes me back to what I used to do in casting tournaments, because we only did at that time we only did 4 fly events. The rest was spinning, and there was 11 events. So only 4 was actually with a fly rod. So I used to do a lot of spinning, both with multiplier and fixed pool. So it takes me back to that, and yeah, it's Toby. As I said, I think he was ahead of his time there, and I think I thought he may have resurrected it. I know he put it sort of on the back burner for a year. Maybe he'll bring it back next year, because I think he would do well. I mean, Bristol was an ideal venue. The venue wasn't perfect for fly casting, but I think the venue was good. The access was good, for people travelling, and it's only up the M5 for anybody from Cornwall, Devon. It's down the M5 across the M4, so it was quite central, be it in the south, obviously. But I think anglers are quite quick to say, oh, there's nothing on for us and all that, but complacency in angling, if you think there's something, you've got to support these events, and it's not a case of sit at home and moan. You've got to, bums on seats, go and support the event. You know, there's no point crying, you know, once they've gone and shouting, oh, I should have got, you know, or I would have gone to it. Well, why didn't you go in the first place? Because Toby put a really professional show on. You know, it was the whole, everything, the stalls, everything was perfect. But unfortunately, not enough people came through the door, and nobody is to blame but the anglers. That, you know, Toby did a really, really good job, set up a fantastic show. It was a great crossover, fly and lure, and you know, I spoke to people afterwards. Oh yeah, well, I was thinking going. I was just going to see how it went the first year. No, go and support it for the first year. You know, and if more anglers had have supported it, well, it would have gone from strength to strength, because the stall holders would have had a good time. They would have made a profit. Toby would have made a bit of money, and it would have gone and carried on and carried on. So, you know, anglers are very quick to complain, but you know, you've got to do your own part as well and support, because unfortunately for show organisers, you spend the same amount of money, this fun setup and everything else. If one person or 10,000 come through the door, their outlay is exactly the same, and it's a big risk for them, really big risk for them.
Yeah. Do you think, though, in the world that we live in now, that people are shopping locally, they're supporting local things, that if something like that happened, that it would, in the world that we are or appear to be in now, that people would support things in a slightly different way now?
I really don't know. Who knows what's going to happen in 6 months? I think it's been the resurrection of the local tackle shop. I was talking to Kevin, who runs the local one in Aberystwyth, and he said it's the busiest year he's ever had. He said it's been brilliant. So many more people coming in. And the thing is, with a local tackle shop, it's yes, they've got tackle to sell, but it's the font of knowledge they have. You know, they know everything. They know. I mean, I was talking to Kevin. He said, "Oh," I said, "Well, listen, I've been doing this and this and this." He said, "Right, try here, try there." He said, "If that doesn't work, there's another guy in the shop." He said, "Listen, we'll get up to Abu Dhabi, go here." I mean, so much knowledge, and they know, you know, they know all the local clubs. They've got all the tickets for them. They know all the local waters. So it's basically a one-stop shop, and they'll put you on. You know, they're not going to give you duff information. You know, they're going to give you the best information that's available to them. And the thing is, you know what anglers are like. If we catch a big fish, we want to tell everybody. So all the anglers go back in the shop and say, "Hey, I caught the," you know, and even this week, oh, 4 salmon were caught on the Ystwyth 2 nights ago. How do you know? You came back in and told us the next morning, you know. And then another guy, "Oh, tell you what, this is fishing really well for bass. How do you know?" This guy bought one and he caught 20 bass on this lure. Right, he said he came back and nearly bought the whole stock out of the shop, you know. And that's what anglers are like. They like to talk, and they like to tell people. Even though I've really found that bass anglers are the most secretive. It's like a secret society in bass angling. They don't like to show you
Yeah.
their marks. They don't. Unbelievable. And even a good friend of mine said, "Well, you're starting to find the marks now. Yeah, have you got any more?" "Yeah, you keep working the coast, you'll find them." And I'm thinking, yeah, you had to do it, and you worked your marks out. Then you know that's what you do. But yeah, and I think it has been a really good thing for local tackle shops. You know, you've got the big boys, and they're great. You know, you go to Glasgow Angling Centre, and it's a one-stop shop for everything. If it's not in there, you don't need it for fishing. You know, it's terrible to go into it as well as an angler, because you know what we're like. You know, we're like magpies. Oh, it's shiny. I'll have that. You know, you've gone in for one thing and you've walked out with 20 things. But you know, we also need the local tackle shop because of their knowledge, and you know, they are brilliant, and they're also good for the local clubs, because they are the shop window, if you like, of your local sort of river angling club. Or you know, Aberystwyth, for instance, I've got 9 lakes. Now, if you weren't to go into the shop, you wouldn't know about half of them. and they know, the Ystwyth. It used to be a really thriving club, but now a couple of members and all that. But it's basically run from the shop. So they're very, very important for the local community and clubs.
Yeah, here. Let's move on a little bit now and talk about trout. And I remember watching, I think it must have been on Sky. Did they put some of your DVDs on Sky or some of your films on?
No, I had a series. I filmed 2 series for Horse and
That's it.
Country, which actually was put on Discovery
Yes.
Shed.
And I remember watching those and they were really, really good. And it made me think, because you had river fishing on there, you had lake fishing. And what do you have a preference? Which is your favorite if I put your arm behind your back and said, right, choose one for me?
That's a tough one. That's a real tough one. I love my reservoir fishing, boat fishing. I love my competition fishing because you put in a boat, sometimes with a total stranger. You fish with them for 8 hours, and you've got a friend for life. You work together to work out what's happening, and you try to catch, help each other. That side of it, I like the camaraderie in competitions. If I had to pick one, it's got to be grayling. It's got to be winter fishing. A lot of it stems from being so busy in the summer. In normal summers where I'd be a chose. Grayling fishing was sort of me time. Come November, December, and I'd spend 3-4 days a week on my own, and it was sort of just downtime, recharging my batteries, and just chilling out. There used to be we used to be on the upper 7. I used to fish quite a lot when Yasmin, God, this is aging me now, when she was in primary school. I used to drop her off at school, and I could be in the river by 10 o'clock. And yeah, I think it was 2 or 3 times I failed to pick her up. The fish were biting. Thankfully, the teachers knew. I turn up in my waders and they go, "Oh, they're biting well today." "Yes, sorry, miss. I won't be late again." And I still love that time. And there was one pool there. There must have been 100 fish in this pool at times. You could see everyone. So I mean, if you wanted to catch a fish at Chuck, you just put nymphs in the middle, not a problem. But I'd always used to target one, and then once I caught, and I could spend half an hour just on that particular one, and then I'd move on to another one. And I did that. We were going to Slovakia for the World Championships, and I sort of wanted to get into a mindset of, right, that fish, then we move on to the next fish and work on it. And I spent a lot of time, and that was great fun. I was actually beaten by 3 fish, but I wasn't in the end. There was 3 nice fish off the pack, and they were. I mean, our biggest off there is 3 3/4,
Wow.
which is a monster fish, but not in this area. And there was 3 fish, and they were around the 2 pound mark, and every fly in the box had gone past their nose, and as the fly went, and it was crystal clear, you could see every reaction, and as the fly would approach, they'd go left or go right, and then fly go through, they'd come back on station. I'm thinking, this is so do one drift, change the fly, another drift, change the fly, and every cast 20, 30 flies at least, and I'm going like, what am I going to do? And in the end, I was looking my fly box, and I had a chest pack, and the rod was lying across the chest pack, and I'm just scratching my head. I've not got a clue what to put on. And at the time, I had a peeping caddis on, and on the point, I had a size 20 pheasant tail, no bead, no weight in it, but with a red, just silk head, and it was on the deck. It wasn't moving. And I was looking in my fly box, and something just caught the corner of my eye. And this fish, those three, the first one came along and picked that pheasant tail off the deck. And I went, you so-and-so. Struck, got him in. I thought, okay. And I caught the other two as well, doing exactly the same. Put it on, don't move it, and then a little twitch with your little finger just to move that pheasant tail just a millimetre, and that was enough to induce the others to take. So, I mean, it has to be grayling, just because of those experiences. And they're very forgiving, you know. Trout, you've got to be stealthy, you know. Grayling sometimes are stupid. I mean, they are so kind. We fished Toby. Myself and John Emerson went to a competition in Norway 3 years ago now, and we were so far behind. I mean, the Finnish guys won it. They were miles ahead. They, I think they doubled the second team's catch. That's how far. I mean, they were 200 plus fish. And we didn't cotton on what was going on. But what they were doing was getting in the water and shuffling, which is totally legal over there, right? And in those rivers, there are no salmon, all right? So they were just basically ground baiting the fish into their thing. And we did, you know, we're over here. You just don't do that, you know, end of. And because Toby and I fished a session, and we managed to get 3 fish out of this stretch. And Fanta Hannock, we were all sharing a log cabin, and Fanta Hannock comes in, said, how'd you do? And I went, well, we got 3. You? 16. I said, you bugger, what do you do? We walk in, we make a dam, we shuffle, no fish. We walk out, we walk in, we shuffle, no fish. We go 20 meters down, we walk in, we make a dam, we shuffle, fish come from everywhere. And that's what they were doing. And John Emerson, he controlled the Finnish guys, and he said, Hywel, I have never seen it. They were tap dancing for an hour and a half, non-stop in the river. He said it was unbelievable. And even in the last session, it was myself and John that was fished the last session together. And I playing a fish, got it in the net, walking across the river. This grayling was basically at my feet. So every step I took, it was trying to pick the bugs coming off the feet. And I told my controller, get my fly out of that fish's mouth as quickly as possible. Fair play to him. He grabbed the fly before the net or anything, just grabbed the fly, flicked it out, and I dropped the flies by my feet. So I got one fish in the net with a controller, and I hooked the fish by my feet, and I just stood there holding that fish on the line, and then he gave me the net. It was unbelievable. And they are. And I remember Scott Mellins, he'd got a new camera. He'd got the GoPro. Don't ask me what model it was, but it was the one that you could see on your phone. So he'd got it on his shin, and he'd phoned me up. He said, I've been up the fridge. This is a top of Llangollen. He says, no fish. What do you mean there's no fish? I said, it's stuffed. And he said, no. And then he played back, because he'd had the GoPro on his shin, and he played back the clips. And all the grayling were at his feet. Every fish. And it was really, if you moved your foot a lot, right, i.e. shuffled it would put the grayling off, because you're pushing up too much of a cloud, and it was pushing the grayling away from him. But if he moved his toe an inch, they were right in, because then and in the clarity of the water, it was unbelievable. You could just see little cloud of algae coming up, and the grayling were virtually at his feet, trying to get any insects that were coming up. And they're brilliant. They are absolutely awesome. And we've got some monsters up in Wales. I know the Froome down your way got some really, really big fish, but we've got some monsters as well. And the D is a special grayling river. It keeps producing fish that, last year, the Grayling Festival, we didn't break the 50, but there's going to be a monster coming out of there soon. And unfortunately, that one's gone now. No Grayling Festival this year either. So COVID-19 has got a lot to answer for.
Yeah. I was listening. It was fascinating listening to you talk about grayling, particularly in the pool when you were fishing it. And I think that's one of the things I love about, like you say, a trout bolts off and it's gone. And then when it's seen a fly once or twice, and then it just does that little move out the way. No, not having
Yeah.
you, but stays there, isn't it? That what makes them so sporting, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, it was as if they were sticking their tongue out at me every time. It was like, drift through, nah, go left, go right, come straight back and go, nah, we're still here. Come on, try it. What have you got? You know, that was, I mean, I must have spent probably 2 hours, if not more, on those 3 fish and managed to catch them. And totally by accident. You know, I didn't plan to do that. But then we actually, in the championships, we were in Slovakia, they came up with a method that the Slovaks using of I mean, it was ridiculous. They called it a peeping caddis. Yeah, right. It was a monster bomb on the top dropper. Unweighted flies behind it, and they were just dropping that in the pool and figure eighting it back. You know, that's how they were catching it, really on the deck. You know, so yeah, I love that. It was just, and unfortunately, due to predation and all that, most of those fish went from that river.
It's interesting listening to you talk about grayling, and for our listeners as well. What tip would you give them that you see that you think would help them improve their grayling fishing a little bit more?
Right. First things first is fish before you go on a walk, or fish where you know you expect to put your feet. It's happened to me. The worst thing about river anglers, and I've been, and I guarantee you have as well. If you're on one bank, you think the fish are on the other bank, you know, and you're transfixed getting your flies to the opposite bank all the time, you know, and a lot of the time the grayling are under your feet. I remember going down a run, Dolisha, which is a farmhouse on the Milo beat, and come down this run. I'm thinking, no, there's got to be fish here. There is fish here. Why aren't I catching? And then just took a step back and thought, what am I doing? And I literally took a step back mentally, thinking, analysing, and then physically took 2-3 steps back in the river, and then proceeded to catch loads of grayling because they were all under my feet. I was standing on them, you know, and that's what most people don't realise. Grayling are under your feet. And you know, and the other thing is that a lot of grayling anglers, I used to carry 2 rods, always carried the dry fly rod set up. Don't anymore, because I just get into so much hassle, like you catching them in trees and all that. So, but what I use now is, you know, the sea rig, you know, the foam winders they use for sea fishing. So I carry all my rigs on them. So I take one rod with a floating line on, nothing on until I get to the river, and then the river dictates what I'm going to start with. But so I have my dry fly cast on the rig. I'll have my French leader. I'll have my braid. You know, I'll have a wet fly cast. All those are ready to go. It's one knot stripped off, and you're back. You're fishing. Because what can happen, especially in the winter, you can have an opportunity can be up to 20 minutes, where a couple of degree changes or half a degree change will get some insects moving. Grayling come off the bottom and are on the top immediately. But if you take 10-15 minutes changing your rigs or setting up a new one, you've missed a fantastic opportunity. And I've had it when I've been up on the Tweed. I've had it, you know, you have 15 minutes of fantastic sport on the surface, you know, middle of December, January, ice on the side of the banks and still fish feeding on the top. And you get 15 minutes of fun, then pack the rig away, get back on your braid or your French leader, and then get back on the bottom, because those fish have gone back down feeding on the bottom, you know. So it's just that speed of being able to adapt to the circumstances so quickly, and that's my tip. And don't wade too far. You know, even before you get in the water, fish the bank that you actually walk before you get in, because if nobody's been there before, the fish are quite contented to be right under the bank, under your feet. But whereas most people want to go to the far bank,
Yeah.
you know,
and I think that was a really good point you started that with, was the river will dictate how I fish, because it's easy to get in the mindset of, well, this worked last time, so that's what I'm going to start with. But that's a really important lesson too, isn't it?
Yeah, I just, honestly, my rod set up, I won't rig anything until I get by the river, and I think, right, yeah, okay, we'll start with this and then go from there. You know, or I'm going to go dry fly fishing today. Yeah, right. You would love it. You know, I was guiding on the D 2 weeks ago, and they didn't stop. Right, I said, oh, there's one glide on here. If they're rising anywhere on the D, they will be on this one, and they were. And it was phenomenal, unbelievable. And they didn't stop rising all day. We were there at 9 in the morning. Well, we got on the river 9:30, and the guys had to come off at 4 because they booked a table in a restaurant. I'm thinking, never do that. Don't book a table in a restaurant when you're going fishing, because you're gonna, you know, that's your set time. They had to get off by 4. They got off by 4:30 because there was still fish rising. And yeah, it was, that's the thing, you know. You have to go there with an open mind, you know, and then let the river dictate to you.
Brilliant. It sounds to me as though you've traveled, fished in many places. Do you have a dream destination? Is there somewhere that you haven't fished so far that you'd really love to go fish?
Yeah,
Where's that?
New Zealand. New Zealand. I was backpacking 93, 94, and I had an opportunity to go to New Zealand. I was actually out. I was worked in Sydney for a little bit, and the Australian Fly Fishing Federation found out I was over, so they invited me over to the first Australian Fly Fishing Championships. Because prior to that, the Australian team, to get into the Australian team for World Championships, you had to apply with a CV of your angling exploits, and you have to be nominated by your club, and you have to be club champion. Then a committee would sit down and they would select the team. So I was over there as guest speaker. I was invited. Didn't realise that guest speaker meant, yeah, you have to talk in the dinner, but you have to help us write our constitution as well, because you know a lot about competition fishing. So it was basically 2 days in a wooden shack, helping them design and write their constitution for the competition scene. But it was brilliant. Then at that time when I was over there, the New Zealand Federation found out, obviously, that I was out there. And they invited me to go to New Zealand. But at the time, I was working in shows in Germany. Eric Brinkhoff, and he had the Brinkhoff Associated Shops. So his shop was in Monacy Delect, and that was in March. And he had 3-4 shows through the year, and he phoned my mum and said, listen, I need him first weekend in March. If he doesn't come, he's not doing any. And now that was a lot of money to lose. So at the same time, I was invited to go to New Zealand, come teach us, help us, train us for a couple of days, and you can go and fish for as long as you want. So I had that opportunity. But then on the other hand, I was going to lose out in work, and I had to come back to the UK, and I missed my opportunity to go to New Zealand, and that was the only opportunity I have. So yeah, it's got to be New Zealand. Proctor just keeps on putting horrible pictures up there with him and monster trout. He just winds me up. And you've got Gary Little, who lives there now, who used to run Little's at Dunchurch. And he just keeps sending me monster pictures of browns and rainbows, and it just makes me sick. Honestly, it just makes me so jealous. I mean, I spoke to Procky about it a few times. He said, I just go, you know, and sometimes I run out of food when I'm backpacking because I've gone too far and the fish are biting too. I'm thinking, oh man, yeah, that's. I would love to do that. To be honest with you, that's that's on my bucket list. There's loads of salt water destinations, but I think having started my angling career on the River Teifi, yeah, it's got to be New Zealand, and just hiking out of the way to these beautiful rivers. Yeah, that's the one that I will do before I sort of pop my clogs and be pushing.
That's not a bad one to choose. That's not a bad one. Now, we've chatted for well over an hour now, and so we'll start winding things down. But if people wanted to spend some time with you on the river and have a guided day, or want some help with their casting stuff, how do they get hold of you?
Basically, my website, hywelmorgan.co.uk. Drop me an email at info@hywelmorgan.co.uk, or Hywel Morgan Fly Fishing on social media. Just get through there. All my contact details are on the website. Please get in touch. There's some wonderful grayling to be caught.
Fantastic. Oh, thank you so much for being a guest on here. It's been great listening to your story. And like we said at the beginning with the CV, you were incredibly modest about it. But God, you've done some stuff, man.
Yeah, I've been fortunate. I suppose I didn't have a choice really when I was a youngster. Dad was going to. Yes, I was going to fish. I remember a story that an old lady from the village, when I was born, she was in hospital, and she went up to him and said, "You better give him a fishing reel now rather than a rattle." And she said, "It makes the same noise anyway." So, and that was it. I basically used to take me to Teifi pools, and really the start of it, used to carry me because the reeds and that used to carry me to the side of the lake and let me fish. So yeah, I was fortunate. Being fortunate, obviously, he was secretary of the Welsh Salmon and Trout Angling Association for 30 years. So as a youngster, 5, 6, 7, I was in all these going to these competitions. I was actually involved with shows. I mean, my first ever venture onto a casting platform was at 4 years of age. Lionel Sweet, who was a famous gilly on the Usk and a British casting champion, he used to always ask for a volunteer from the crowd at the Royal Welsh Agricultural Show, which is big show, 4 days every year. And from the age of 4, I was that volunteer. So I used to go up every year. Oh, who have we got here? Oh, all right. And let me show you how to do it, young lad. And really, really fortunate because, obviously when you're being taught by a British champion, Dad was a fisherman, but he wasn't really, even I think one of the last times we went fishing together, I was still as, "Dad, for God's sake, slow down. You cast, come on, you should be better." And he just wouldn't listen. He said, "It's good enough to catch fish." So there, and that's what he used to tell me. But I was fortunate, Lionel Sweet, British champion, that's who taught me to cast. And then as I got better, I met Mike Weddell, who was another British, who was a world champion, who went to New Zealand. But he was, he taught me some of the tournaments. Jack Martin as well. Jack had a brilliant way of teaching. It was unbelievable. I actually went up to Scarborough for a weekend with Jack, and he used to sit on his shooting stick right next to him, and we were using T42s and T120s, the salmon, and used to sit right next to you, just close enough that he could swing his arm and clip you around the earhole. Honestly, right? And it was the salmon, and I tell you what, if you get the tracking wrong on salmon, you are in big trouble. And I did, and it caught me around the back of the neck, and it was a bloodline right across the back of my neck, and it was bleeding. And he said, "What's the matter, boy?" Nothing, gritted teeth. And he clipped me around the earhole, and he said, "Right, stay straight." Yeah, okay, Jack, okay. Right, stayed straight on the next one. "Yes, but you're not giving it enough power." Clip around the earhole, more power. So I cut it, and it caught me. So now I got 2 bloodlines across the back of my neck. And I went like, and he said, "I can't understand why you're not keeping straight. I'm going to go down." And he went down about 50, 60 meters in front of me. And I've seen what you're doing wrong. Right, okay, change this, do that. Right, okay, now let's see. And he stayed in front of me, which was the biggest mistake he's ever done. Or he did. Because I launched this salmon rod, the line towards him. And as it went towards him, I just stopped and pulled back. This line just he turned and it caught him on his back. And honestly, he had a blood pig's tail, right? And he had a white shirt on all the way around, like an S on his back. And he went, right, he said, I think we'll have a break now. And I went, right, I'm bleeding, he's bleeding, right? But what a man. He was brilliant. I just loved him. I used to love watching him when he was demonstrating the game. He was such a character. And I thought it was him. I'm sure, yeah, it was Jack that actually played. They had an Olympic swimmer at the game fair. And it was Jack against her. She was tied on with a belt. And I remember speaking, I must have been 12 or 13. I remember speaking to the swimmer afterwards. I said, well, did he beat you then? She said, no. I stopped swimming. I had to help him because I thought he had a heart attack. But yeah, really, really
lovely. And it's lovely you've kept that family tradition because, of course, your daughter helps out on some of your demonstrations too.
Actually, both of them do. Look, I've just got a new as well. Yes, Yasmin, the eldest, she used to do it, but now because of health problems, she's taken a back seat. But she actually ties flies at shows now. We did a show last year in Norfolk, and now to the purists, you won't know what this material is, but ecstasy, right? She wanted to see how many different colors of ecstasy she could pack on a hook, right? And I'm going, oh God, Yasmin, please tie some proper flies. I tell you what, how wrong was I? Because all the kids, they weren't interested in everybody else tying proper flies. They just wanted to see the colourful ones that Yasmin would. And I thought, yeah, you're right. Get the kids involved. And all the kids would come, look, how many colours. And it was brilliant. But now, I mean, Yasmin was a British champion. She won it at the game fair. And Tanya, my youngest, she's got more into fishing. She won the youth national last year. It was, I mean, I was allowed to gilly, and there was two girls, Tanya and Fleer, and they did random draw, two girls in the same boat, which was brilliant, and they both qualified. But Tanya came out; she had 17 fish. There was a lot of boys out there that were really cocky in the morning. They're not so much when they came back in at night. She did really, really well. Really, really well. So, yeah, I mean, again, I don't think they hadn't much choice. You know, same as me. Dad was mad keen fisherman. I'm a mad keen fisherman. And they come to shows and they enjoy it. You know, that's the only thing. I never force it on them. If they want to come fishing, they come fishing. And this year, to be honest, haven't done that much trout fishing because I've just been doing bass fishing. And Tanya came along, picked the best day that I've had out there. The sea was flat calm. Mackerel were boiling everywhere. The bass were boiling behind the mackerel. And then it was just brilliant. The seals were messing around as well, which is no good for fishing. But Tanya said, this is brilliant. This is brilliant. You know, and it's hard work because it's clambering over rocks and walking for miles and miles and miles. You know, it's great for your health. And she said, I think I like this more than fly fishing. I'm going, oh, no. Don't say that. I said, it's another way of fishing, okay?
Yeah, that's nice.
So I've got to get it back.
That's nice. And so the dynasty continues. And it's really important, isn't it, not to push your passion onto your children, isn't it? It's really, really important to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the casting side of it was, you know, just a bit of fun. Again, what I did with them was hula hoops in the back garden. See if you can beat Dad. So in the end, they were coming back from school and going, "Come on, then, I'm going to take you on tonight." And if they hit 10, I would hit 11. So they had that. Oh, I didn't quite beat you. So a little bit more target. And yeah, they enjoy it. But yeah, I never push it on them. And if they want to come, they can come. If they don't want to, then no. And I mean, it was important. I suppose I did push them a little bit to come into demonstrations. The reason for that is that, Yasmin's now 21 and she started when she was 4. So you're talking, 17 years ago, we were seeing a major decline, and we still are seeing a decline in the youngsters coming into the sport. I'll give you an example. In Wales, years ago, the youth national, so to get into the Welsh team, you'd have 60, 80 kids trying. We're down to 20, and it's the same in England, it's the same in Scotland. They are seeing less and less kids come into sport. So I always, with the demonstrations, I wanted to make it child friendly. So a child would watch it and go, well, I mean, and it worked in 2 ways, because obviously Yasmin's a girl. So if the boy's watching, well, she's a girl. If a girl can do it, why can't I? And young girls, well, there's a young girl doing it, I want to have a go. So it was trying to inspire kids. It's no point kids watching, me casting. That but if they watch a young girl or a young boy casting, it's at their same level. It's their age group, and they well, if she's doing it, why can't I have a go? And that's what we always try to do, is inspire the next generation to just have a go at it. And it's a great thing in shows, because not only can they watch it, they can also, in a lot of the shows, then they can go and have a lesson. You've got Get Hooked on Angling that have been at a lot of shows as well. Not only can they go and have a lesson, they can also go and catch a fish. So it's a great way of catching kids. Do the Midland Game Fair, and the Midland Game Fair it's done on a horse jump, right? It's a kidney pool in the middle of the showground, but they put carp in there, and the number of times that I've actually stopped, because I'm in the commentary box and I'm watching these kids catching fish, I've actually stopped demonstrators sometimes in mid-flow and said, look guys, just have a look at the young child down there and have a look at the smile on their face, because they've caught a fish. And it's so important if we can get kids involved. And that's why I sort of encouraged, I wouldn't say pushed them, but I encouraged my daughters to demonstrate, because hopefully then it would actually inspire young kids that are watching want to have a go at it. And we're still struggling with kids into the sport, to be honest, but we can only keep on trying, and hopefully that 294% increase in rod license sales, there's been a lot, parents have come back into it, they might take their kids with them. So let's hope there's a snowball effect where if the parents are coming back into it, they'll bring their kids along, and the next there'll be a stronger next generation into the sport.
Let's hope for that too. Hugh, it's been brilliant talking to you. There's so much we covered and so much you've told us, and I hope that we get to some sort of normal at some stage, that we get to turn up at a show and hear your voice over the PA, because it's a nice constant, and we know everything's good when that's going on. So I'd like to thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you very much. And thank you for producing such a wonderful magazine as well. It's a refreshing change, we're losing magazines all the time. So it's nice to see one bucking the trend, and
thanks so much. Continue. Thanks so much again, Hugh. It's been brilliant. Everyone, this has been the Fly Culture podcast. Thank you so much for listening. You can now view this on YouTube as well. So if you want to watch YouTube, head over to the Fly Culture YouTube channel as well, and you can watch this podcast when it's out. But thanks again, everyone, for listening. And there'll be plenty more podcasts very, very soon. Thanks.